Have you ever wondered why the virtuous fall while the ruthless rise? Why honesty is praised in speech, yet crushed in practice? Today, we confront the problem that torments every age, the brutal truth of human nature, and why power always wins. Let us strip away the comforting illusions for a moment. Let us speak not as children dazzled by ideals, but as men and women who dare to confront reality as it is. At the core of all human behavior lies one unshakable law: human nature is self-serving. To deny this is to misunderstand the game of life itself. Men and women, no matter how noble they appear, act first for themselves. Behind every mask of kindness, behind every declaration of virtue, there is calculation. A calculation of gain, of loss, of survival. You see, generosity is not truly born from pure goodness. It is often a transaction, whether spoken or silent. When someone offers you their hand, it is wise to ask, what do they hope to take with the other? Machiavelli understood that people are not loyal out of principle, but out of necessity. A man remains faithful as long as it serves his interest. He will praise you while you are strong, while you are useful, while you are feared. But strip these from your grasp and his tongue will change, his loyalty will vanish, his affection will sour into betrayal. This is not cynicism. This is reality. Think of the merchant who smiles at his customers. He does not smile because his heart overflows with joy. He smiles because his wealth depends on it. Think of the politician who kisses children on the campaign trail. Do you believe he loves every child? No. He loves the votes, the power, the throne it secures. Even in friendship, even in family, self-interest breathes beneath the surface. A father provides for his children because they are his bloodline, his legacy, his immortality. A friend stands by your side because of what you represent. Companionship, support, protection. Remove these and the bond thins like a thread ready to snap. This truth may disturb you, but it also frees you. For once you accept that people are driven by self-interest, you stop expecting virtue where there is none. You stop placing your fate in the hands of others, and instead, you begin to anticipate their desires, their fears, their hidden motives. You become master of reading men and therefore the master of controlling them. Consider the marketplace of promises we live in. Men will promise loyalty, but in reality, they weigh your power against their advantage. They will speak of honesty, but honesty is discarded the moment lies yield profit. They will claim to love you, but love is abandoned the instant it becomes inconvenient. Machiavelli teaches us, men are not angels fallen from heaven. They are beasts clothed in civility. They seek food, they seek shelter, they seek advantage. Their instincts drive them, and their instincts are selfish. When a ruler, or even an ordinary man, believes too much in the goodness of others, he sets himself upon the path of destruction. History is written with the names of kings and leaders who trusted the loyalty of their followers, only to be betrayed when fortune shifted. Caesar trusted Brutus. Countless monarchs trusted their nobles, and what did they earn? Daggers in their backs, thrones overturned, heads rolled upon the ground. It is not only the mighty who suffer for their naivety. Even in the common life, the worker who trusts his employer to protect him out of kindness will be discarded when profit demands it. The lover who believes affection is eternal will learn the bitterness of betrayal when desire seeks a new host. The man who lends without contract, trusting merely in a friend's word, will one day watch his gold disappear. And yet, here lies the brilliance of understanding self-interest. Once you see it, you can use it. If men are selfish, then appeal to their selfishness. If they are greedy, then bind them with the promise of gain. If they are fearful, then chain them with the certainty of punishment. To rule, to lead, to survive. You do not demand loyalty for its own sake. You construct loyalty out of necessity, out of fear, out of self-preservation. For when a man sees his interest aligned with yours, he will serve you willingly, even eagerly. But let us not pretend that love or morality holds greater weight. Love fades when hardship arrives. Morality bends when gold glitters or danger threatens. What endures is self-interest. It is the pulse of humanity. The king who ignores this truth becomes a slave to illusions. The man who embraces it becomes a master of reality. Men speak endlessly of virtue, of justice, of morality, as if these things hold dominion over the world. They imagine that truth is eternal, that justice is unshakable, that morality is a divine law written into the fabric of human existence. But this is not the world as it is. This is the world as the weak wish it to be. The brutal reality is this: morality does not rule power. Morality bows before it. Let us now examine the question that has haunted rulers, leaders, and even lovers since the dawn of time. Is it better to be loved or to be feared? The naive will answer love, for they believe love is pure, eternal, and binding. But those who have walked among men, those who have ruled, those who have tasted betrayal, know the harsher truth. Love is fragile, fear is enduring. Fear is stronger than love. Love binds men only so long as it pleases them. It exists when times are easy, when fortune smiles, when no sacrifice is required. But love vanishes when hardship comes, when loyalty demands suffering, when obedience requires cost. A follower may swear he loves his ruler, yet abandon him the moment enemies surround the gates. A friend may swear eternal loyalty, yet vanish when misfortune strikes. Even in families where bonds are thought sacred, love is tested by greed, by envy, by the pursuit of advantage. How many sons have betrayed their fathers for inheritance? How many brothers have drawn swords against each other for power? Love promises much but delivers little when weighed against self-interest. Fear, however, does not vanish in hardship. Fear compels obedience when love falters. A man may stop loving his ruler, but he will still obey if disobedience means punishment. A soldier may doubt his general, but he will march if retreat means execution. Fear penetrates deeper into the human heart than affection because fear is rooted in self-preservation. Love is a sentiment, fear is survival, and survival always wins. Consider this truth in history. Those rulers who depended solely on love, who sought to please their people, to avoid cruelty, to build their power on affection, were often betrayed or cast aside. They were loved when fortune smiled, but abandoned when fortune turned. Contrast them with rulers who built their authority on fear. They may not have been loved, but they were obeyed. They endured longer, for obedience born of fear does not vanish when hardships multiply. Do not mistake this for cruelty without purpose. To rule by fear does not mean to indulge in savagery for its own sake. Excessive cruelty breeds hatred, and hatred invites rebellion. But measured fear, directed wisely, creates stability. It is the knowledge that disobedience will not go unpunished, that betrayal carries consequence, that the ruler is not to be tested lightly. This is the foundation upon which durable power rests. Love, in contrast, is too easily manipulated. Men pretend love for as long as it serves them. They flatter, they promise, they smile. But these gestures are empty when weighed against their true interests. A ruler who relies on love alone has built his throne on sand. For when the tide of fortune shifts, he will see that love was never loyalty, but convenience. Even in ordinary life, you can witness this truth. An employer may believe his workers love him for his kindness, but their loyalty is tested the moment a better offer arrives. A man may believe his lover's affection is eternal, but desire changes when another offers more pleasure, more wealth, more security. Parents may believe children are bound to them by unconditional love, yet when inheritance is at stake, affection can dissolve into rivalry. Fear, however, does not depend on moods or shifting emotions. Fear creates consistency, it creates order. A man who fears consequences does not weigh his options endlessly, he obeys. A subject who fears punishment does not gamble with rebellion. Fear is not a fleeting emotion. It is a chain wrapped around the heart, tightening whenever disobedience tempts. Machiavelli himself observed that it is safer to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. Why? Because love is voluntary. It rests in the choice of others, and thus it is outside your control. Fear, however, can be created, maintained, enforced. It rests in your hands, not theirs. A wise ruler does not abandon love entirely. Affection is useful when fortune allows it, but he never builds solely upon it. He understands that when love fails, fear will hold the walls firm, and let us not be deceived by modern pretenses. Even today, leaders claim they want to be loved by their people, admired by their followers, adored by the crowd. But behind the curtain, their survival rests on fear. The fear of losing privilege, the fear of punishment, the fear of exclusion. Nations still obey laws not because they love justice, but because they fear the cost of breaking them. Armies still march not because they adore their commanders, but because they fear the weight of discipline. Families still remain bound by duty not only through affection, but through the fear of shame, of dishonor, of consequence. Love is sweet but fleeting. Fear is bitter but enduring. When stripped of illusions, men obey not from devotion, but from the shadow that fear casts over their lives. And the ruler, the leader, the man who understands this, wields a weapon stronger than any promise of affection. Throughout history, men have argued over truth, justice, faith, and morality, as if these forces decide the fate of nations. Philosophers write volumes on virtue. Priests thunder about divine judgment. Lawyers twist words to defend law. Yet when the dust of debate settles, when armies clash, when thrones tremble, when lives hang in the balance, one force alone dictates the outcome. Power. Power is the final arbiter. Without power, truth has no voice. A philosopher may discover the deepest wisdom, but if he lacks authority, his words remain whispers in the dark. With power, even falsehood becomes truth, for it is proclaimed loudly, enforced by law, and remembered by history. Power bends reality to its will. What men call truth is often nothing more than the decree of the strong. Without power, justice is a dream. Men may define what is right or wrong, but without the strength to enforce it, justice is ignored. The thief respects no law unless punishment awaits him. The conqueror acknowledges no treaty unless the sword of his opponent is sharp. Courts and constitutions are parchment, easily torn, unless backed by the force of arms. Justice, stripped of power, is begging. Justice, armed with power, is law. Without power, morality is an echo. Men may cling to noble ideals, but ideals alone cannot stop an invader, cannot silence a traitor, cannot preserve a kingdom. A ruler who governs by morality alone will be devoured by those who wield strength without scruple. The virtuous may be admired in words, but they are destroyed in deeds. It is power that determines whether morality is upheld or discarded. Look to history, and you will see the pattern repeated endlessly. Empires rose not because they were more just, but because they wielded greater strength. Rome did not conquer the world with virtue, it conquered with legions. Kings did not secure their thrones with fairness, they secured them with armies loyal to their command. Revolutions did not succeed because they were righteous, they succeeded because they seized weapons, organized force, and imposed their vision upon the unwilling. Even religion, which claims dominion over the soul, submits to this law. Faith spreads not only by persuasion, but by power. Temples are built not only by devotion, but by the wealth of rulers. Doctrines are preserved not only by prayer, but by the sword raised against heresy. The prophets may speak, but without the backing of power, their words vanish like smoke in the wind. With power, however, even myths become eternal truths, shaping nations for centuries. In every struggle, whether of nations, of classes, or of individuals, the deciding factor is never who was right, but who was strong. A man may be right in argument, yet still lose if he cannot enforce his will. A nation may fight for freedom, yet perish if its armies are weak. A ruler may claim legitimacy, yet fall if he cannot defend his throne. In the end, history remembers not the defeated cause, no matter how noble. It remembers the victor, and the victor writes the record. Observe even the smallest details of daily life. A man with influence at court bends laws to his advantage, while the powerless suffer under them. A wealthy merchant dictates terms to the poor, while they submit out of necessity. A general commands soldiers into battle, and they march not because they love him, but because his authority and discipline compel obedience. From the grand stage of empires to the humble dealings of men, power decides. This truth should not dishearten, but awaken. For once you recognize that power is the final arbiter, You cease to live in illusion. You no longer expect justice to triumph by its own virtue, or truth to prevail by its own brilliance, or morality to endure by its own sanctity. You understand that these survive only when backed by strength, by will, by force. The man who commands power determines what is just, what is true, what is moral. The man without power merely hopes, and power takes many forms. It can be the raw strength of arms, the disciplined might of organized soldiers, the wealth that buys influence, the cunning that bends others to your will, the fear that keeps rebellion silent, the loyalty born of necessity. Each form converges on the same reality, the ability to impose one's will upon others. This and this alone determines who rules and who obeys. The dreamers will protest. They will cry that truth, justice, and morality must one day overcome brute force. They will insist that goodness has a destiny to triumph, but open the pages of history and you will see their mistake. The good do not triumph because they are good. They triumph only when they are strong. And the wicked do not fall because they are wicked. They fall only when they are weak. In the final judgment of men and nations, there is no higher court than power itself. We have walked through the shadows of truth and stripped away the illusions men cling to. We have seen that human nature is selfish, that morality bends before authority, that fear binds more tightly than love, and that power alone decides who writes the laws, who tells the story, who shapes the world. This is the brutal reality that many deny, but which none can escape. The weak hide behind ideals, the naive worship virtue, but the strong bend these forces to their will. And history does not remember who was right, it remembers who prevailed. So the question that remains is not whether you wish the world were different. The question is whether you will accept it as it is. Will you stand blind, trusting in promises and virtues? Or will you open your eyes and recognize the law that governs all? For in the end, only one truth endures. Power does not argue, power does not plead, power does not wait. Power decides. What men call moral or immoral has never been fixed. It shifts like sand beneath the tides of authority. When the strong rise, their will defines what is good. When they fall, the conqueror rewrites the script. One century calls an act noble, the next calls it evil. Consider this: when a king slaughters his enemies to seize a throne, he is condemned as a usurper by those he defeated. But once his crown is secure and his dynasty flourishes, that same act is recorded by historians as destiny, as divine justice, as rightful conquest. Morality is not truth. It is propaganda written by those who triumph. The weak cling to morality because it is their only shield. Stripped of force, they appeal to principles, hoping to restrain the strong with words. They cry out that justice is sacred, that fairness must be honored, that truth is untouchable. But these are the weapons of the powerless. The strong do not bow to these appeals. They bend morality to their needs, just as the blacksmith bends iron into a blade. If a ruler requires cruelty to preserve his state, he will call it necessity. If he needs deception to outwit his enemies, he will call it prudence, and his people, desiring security more than virtue, will echo his words and call it good. You see, morality has always been a mask. It conceals the calculations of power behind a veil of righteousness. A ruler taxes his subjects heavily, and he names it the price of stability. He silences dissent, and he names it the protection of order. He invades a neighbor, and he names it the defense of honor. By dressing power in the garments of virtue, he not only rules, he convinces his people to celebrate their own subjugation. History offers us endless examples. The Church declared wars of conquest as holy crusades, baptizing bloodshed with the language of salvation. The victors of empires called their expansion civilization, while the conquered called it tyranny. The revolutionaries who toppled monarchs declared themselves champions of liberty, until they too erected new forms of tyranny cloaked in the same noble words. The pattern never changes. Morality is a chameleon, its colors shifting to match the cloak of power. Think of how laws are written. A law is nothing more than a command backed by authority. It is called justice because the ruler says it is. If tomorrow a new ruler seizes power and rewrites those laws, the definition of justice shifts again. What was legal yesterday becomes criminal today. What was honorable today may be treason tomorrow. The content of morality does not come from heaven. It comes from the throne. Even in the common life, the same truth holds. A man of wealth may call generosity a virtue when he is the giver, but thrift a virtue when he wishes to keep his gold. A poor man may praise honesty when cheated, but will see no dishonor in deceit if it wins him bread for his children. Morality in the hands of men bends always to convenience. It is not the compass they follow. It is the excuse they invent after the path is chosen. And why do men so easily accept this shifting morality? Because they crave security more than they crave virtue. If a ruler provides stability, the people forgive cruelty. If he delivers prosperity, they excuse corruption. If he protects them from fear, they ignore his lies. The citizens do not truly desire morality. They desire survival, and survival is guaranteed only by power. Thus they worship the strong, and in worshiping, they adopt his morality as their own. Therefore, when we speak of morality, we must speak of it not as a master, but as a servant. It is a servant to authority, a servant to victory, a servant to survival. The weak may cry of higher laws, of eternal truths, but history erases their voices. What remains is the morality of those who conquered, those who ruled, those who dared to bend justice to their will. For in the end, the world remembers not what was right, but who prevailed.